Once, in the heart of the great Kwukuki Kingdom, there ruled a mighty king named Zuberi. His name struck fear in the hearts of his enemies and admiration in the hearts of his people. He was a warrior king, chosen by the gods and revered by all who walked the land. His kingdom stretched from the thick jungles in the east to the great golden savannas in the west. Under his rule, the Kwukuki people prospered, their granaries filled with millet and their cattle growing fat under the warm sun. King Zuberi had a wife, Queen Adanna, a woman of rare wisdom and strength. She was known as the mother of the kingdom, a pillar upon which the people leaned. But despite her love for her husband and her devotion to the kingdom, Zuberi's heart was restless. One day, as he rode through the bustling markets of Kwukuki, his eyes fell upon a woman who was unlike any he had ever seen. She was not of noble blood, nor was she adorned in the fine silks of the palace. She was a woman of the night, a temptress who went by the name of Delilah. Her beauty was like the moonlight, soft, alluring, and dangerous. Her laughter rang through the streets like the sound of a flute, and her gaze held a spell that no man could resist. The king, despite his wisdom and power, fell under her enchantment. At first, Zuberi kept his obsession hidden. He visited Delilah in the dark of night, sneaking away from the palace like a thief. But soon, his visits became more frequent, his desires more reckless. He showered Delilah with gifts, golden bangles, rare silks, and precious stones. He ignored the affairs of the kingdom, leaving Queen Adanna to rule in his absence. The elders whispered among themselves. The warriors shook their heads in disapproval. The people murmured in the markets, speaking in hushed tones of the king who had abandoned his throne for a woman of no worth. Queen Adanna confronted him. "My king," she said, her voice steady but her heart heavy, "have you forgotten your duty? The kingdom is falling into disarray. Your people need you." But Zuberi, blinded by his lust, dismissed her words. "The kingdom is fine," he scoffed. "You are here to rule in my stead. Do as you have always done." Adanna's heart burned with anger, but she said nothing more. She had served this kingdom for years, stood by Zuberi through war and famine. But she could not stand by and watch as he destroyed everything they had built. It was not long before the elders, the warriors, and even the common people decided that a king who no longer cared for his throne was no king at all. One night, as Zuberi lay in Delilah's arms, soldiers stormed into the small hut where they lay. The warriors of Kwukuki, led by the queen herself, surrounded him. Zuberi sat up in shock. "What is the meaning of this?" he roared. Queen Adanna stepped forward. "You have forsaken your throne," she declared. "You have abandoned your people. From this night onward, you are no longer king of Kwukuki." Zuberi's heart pounded in his chest. "You cannot do this." "The people have already decided," she said. "You chose your love for this woman over your love for the kingdom. And now, you will leave." And so, the great King Zuberi was stripped of his throne. If you have watched this far, and you're enjoying the story, kindly like and subscribe. Now back to the story. With nothing but the clothes on his back, Zuberi wandered the land. The once great king became nothing more than a beggar, a man with no kingdom, no power, and no honor. He traveled from village to village, seeking shelter, but no one would house a fallen king. His name, once spoken with reverence, was now met with laughter and scorn. Delilah, the woman for whom he had lost everything, abandoned him the moment his power was gone. She found another man, one with wealth and status, and left Zuberi to rot. For years, Zuberi lived in shame. He hunted his own food, slept under the stars, and wept for the life he had thrown away. He longed to return to Kwukuki, but he knew that he was no longer welcome. Then, one fateful day, he met an old man named Zuberi. Zuberi was a wise hermit who lived deep in the mountains, far from the reach of kings and warriors. He took Zuberi in, taught him the ways of the land, and helped him find strength in the hardship he had suffered. "The gods are not finished with you yet," Zuberi told him. "You lost your way, but you can still find it again. If you are to reclaim your throne, you must prove yourself worthy. And so, Zuberi trained. He learned patience, discipline, and the true meaning of leadership. He hunted with his hands, fought with his heart, and meditated under the moon. Years passed, and the once broken king became a man of wisdom. One evening, as Zuberi sat by the fire, he heard whispers on the wind. A group of travelers spoke of the kingdom of Kwukuki. The queen rules wisely, one man said, but there is unrest. The kingdom faces war from the east. A cruel warlord, Okoth, marches toward Kwukuki with his army. The people are afraid. Zuberi's heart clenched. His kingdom was in danger. The next morning, he set out for Kwukuki. When he arrived, he found a land preparing for battle. The warriors sharpened their spears, and the people prayed to the gods for protection. Queen Adanna stood at the front of the army, her face fierce, but in her eyes, Zuberi saw weariness. He stepped forward. "I have returned." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some stared in shock, others in anger. But Adanna, though surprised, met his gaze with calm. "What do you seek?" she asked. "My throne," he said. "But first, I seek to save my people." A murmur spread among the warriors. He was still Zuberi, the fallen king, but he was also the man who had once led them to victory. Adanna studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Then fight for them." And so, Zuberi took up his spear once more. The battle against warlord Okoth was fierce. The enemy came like a storm, fierce and unrelenting. But Zuberi, alongside Adanna, led the warriors with skill and strategy. He fought not as a king seeking power but as a man fighting for his home. After many days of bloodshed, Kwukuki stood victorious. The people, once wary of Zuberi, now saw him in a new light. He had lost everything, but he had returned not to take, but to protect. On the day of victory, Adanna stood before the people. "The gods have spoken," she said. "Zuberi was once a great king, and he was once a fool. But today, he is a warrior, a leader, and a protector. Kwukuki needs a ruler who will fight for it." She turned to him. "Take back your throne." And so, after years of exile, Zuberi became king once more. But this time, he ruled with wisdom. And beside him stood Queen Adanna, the true heart of Kwukuki. And they lived happily ever after. The end. Kindly like, share, comment and subscribe for more amazing African folktale.